Greetings and welcome to A Sip of Inspiration.
Every moment in your life is filled with all the opportunities that life has to offer.
My name is Stephanie Wilson-Coleman.
You see, life is a canvas, and you decide to color. What colors will you choose for your life today?
Greetings and welcome to A Sip of Inspiration. My name is Stephanie Wilson-Coleman, the Empowerment Doctor, and I want to thank you for joining us through tonight's show. Tonight we will talk about one of our most important things, and that's money. So we've entitled this show Money Matters. I believe that your life is a canvas and is filled with lots of colors. One of those colors is the color of money. I want to help you tonight fill that portion of your canvas with wonderful, great ideas about money, with ideas about what to do, what not to do, and when the best time is to do that. Helping me with that tonight is Eric O. January, CPA, a financial advisor for the Empowerment Doctor magazine, which is a free online magazine, and the author of Most Sense Book 3, Managing Risk. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you for having me. And thank you all for listening.
We're going to just dive right in and talk about some of my favorite things. And you have
Sure.
some very interesting issues that you discuss in the book, so we want to talk about some of that. A lot of times people are afraid to handle their money because they don't know how to determine which risks are right for them.
That's right.
How would you suggest that they begin to look at that?
Sure. Well, first, the topic of the third book is dealing with how do you manage risk.
Okay.
And most people that are not investing, often one of the reasons they give is that they're afraid of risk. They're afraid to lose money. And so I actually go through the book and actually explain how do you value the different types of risk and then what risk actually is. I define it as engaging in an activity that involves some type of uncertainty. So I not only define it, but also tell you what you should be able to do in order to mitigate it and to reduce it. So one of the things that I suggest that a person do is, one, just don't act like, I believe one of the principles that I have in there, I talk about realize that you're going to burn up, your principal is going to burn up. I forget how it says it in that question, that the principal is going to be burnt up.
Right.
Most people are saying, oh, I'm afraid of losing my money, so as a result of being afraid of losing their money, they don't want to risk. But the reality is when you invest, whether it's in a stock, bond, or a mutual fund, your principal is going to be burnt up like smoke. And your principal is actually going to be converted to whatever it is that you invested in, whether it's real estate, whether it's a franchise or something like that. So that's just the reality. The question is, what are you getting back in exchange for it? So that's where the risk comes in.
Okay, now, there are terms that people hear often, risk averse or not risk averse. What do those terms mean, and how should people look at those in their life?
Sure. When they talk about that terminology, in terms of being risk averse, they're really talking about a person's nature. Some people are conservative in nature, some people are more aggressive in nature, and one of the things that I actually talk about in the book and explain is that how you typically behave is not really what's most important when it comes to taking risk.
Okay.
What's most important is that you do what's necessary in order to accomplish your goal. So say, for instance, if a person is normally very conservative, meaning you're going to take the most risk-adverse investment or do the thing that is the safest. You want a sure bet. You believe that a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush.
Right.
That may be your normal personality, but if you need a greater return on investment than what you're currently being offered, what I tell people is that you've got to be willing to take some additional risk. Because there's no way to get around it. If you don't take the additional risk, what you're essentially saying and ensuring is that you're going to fail, that you won't be able to accomplish your goals. Because, say, for instance, there are a number of people that are risk adverse that often put their money into CDs. Well, bank CDs are yielding about 1 to 2%,
right. 1 to 2%.
Right now. So that's not keeping up with cost of inflation. So that means you're actually losing purchasing power every single month that you keep your money tied up in that CD. So if you multiply that out over 10 years or 20 years, your principal will have been eroded, your money will be gone, and then all of a sudden you'll be broke.
Okay. Now, I know at some point in your life it's really good to take some risk, and then some point in your life you probably should be more conservative. At what point should you really start to become conservative?
Well, I believe that, and I talk about that in terms of what I call the law of concentration. and it's really talking about the subject of diversification.
Okay.
And I use that, I use an analogy in the book using the natural laws of momentum to explain what people should be doing with their money. And what I actually say is, I ask the question, what will move faster if three objects weighed the same? If a square, a ball, or a triangle were right beside each other and moved down the hill, what would get down the hill first? The square, ball, or the triangle? The ball. Everybody knows that. The ball, and that's because it's got a concentrated mass. This mass is concentrated near the X and Y axis. That's a physical principle of momentum. And what that principle tells us is who should diversify and who shouldn't diversify.
Okay.
So if you have, say for instance, if you're in a position where you're earning $1 million a year, and you're quite comfortable with $1 million a year, and you're just happy with where you're at, God has blessed you, and you realize at this point that you can't afford, you don't want to lose that money, that's when you should diversify. But if you're just starting off in life and you want to get to the point where you have $1 million of income, you shouldn't diversify at that point. You should actually concentrate. And I believe one of the biggest mistakes that people actually make today is they diversify too soon.
Okay.
And in fact, when you listen to a number of people today, in fact, Mark Cuban, the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, and I talked about it in the book, they had a debate between him and John Vogel. And John Vogel was saying that diversification, diversification, diversification. He told everybody you should diversify, whereas Mark Cuban said diversification is for idiots. So,
right, and this financial world is generally split upon what people should do one way or the other.
Right.
But let's digress a little bit. Let's say you've got some debt, okay, and you've got some income, and it's good income, and that you've been at it for a while, and it's decent income, and you don't spend every dime you have in debt.
Right.
How important is it? How important is that a debt, and how should you look at debt?
Sure.
Good debt, bad debt.
I believe all debt is bad. And we, prior to the real estate crisis, people used to often say when they advised people to use OPM, other people's money, that there was a such thing as good debt and bad debt. And good debt is debt that helped you make money, and bad debt was consumer debt, things that you just use to spend on groceries and things that didn't necessarily generate some type of income. And what I essentially explained, that all debt is bad because you never know how an investment is going to pan out. And if the investment turns sour, the only thing you may be left with is a bunch of debt. So from that perspective, the advice that I give people is that out of debt, out of danger. I believe that all debt is bad, and although there are times that, say for instance, if you're going to buy a house, even in this market where prices of real estate have substantially dropped, people often don't have $100,000 sitting in the bank to pay for a house.
Right.
Many don't have $20,000 to pay for a house. And if you, at that point, realize that you're going to be paying rent versus having the possibility of owning a house, in that instance, I would advise go out and get some type of loan, a low interest rate loan, and pay it off in accelerated fashion before you take on any additional risk.
Okay.
Because when you take that risk and you get that loan, it's under the assumption that you would have the ability to repay it.
That's right.
That's an assumption. That's a risk that you take. You may not have the ability to pay. It may be just $20,000. There are condos and co-ops that are selling for $10,000 and $20,000 all night and day in the Chicagoland area. But we can't assume that you'll be able to pay that. Who knows what may happen? So that's why I advise if you get some debt, pay it off in an accelerated fashion.
Now, okay, so we got debt. I got to figure out how to pay it off. How do I reevaluate the income that I have coming in order to help me achieve the goal of paying off the debt?
Sure, right. One of the things that I often advocate through my business, as you mentioned, I'm a CPA, and one of the things that I like to do is tell people to take a personal inventory.
Okay.
You should add up all of your assets, all your liabilities. Look at all of your sources of income. Look at all of your expenditures as far as cash flow on a monthly basis, and what that provides is, to me, what I call a financial inventory. And once you take that inventory, and then you use that in relation to your goals, it'll tell you what you need to do. Because, like, say, for instance, people often are told to get financial plans and get a financial plan, and everybody wants a financial plan, or to budget is the better example. People are always told to budget, And budgeting is like pulling teeth. I mean, I work with business people for the most part, and that's one of the things that most of them hate to do. But a budget is no good without having a plan attached to it. So say, for instance, the United States. Every single year, the United States government has to pass a balanced budget, has to pass a budget. And if it does not pass a budget, operations have to cease. Well, although the United States, just like the state of Illinois and state of California, have budgets, what's happening to their, what direction are they moving in? We're getting further and further in debt. And that's because the budget is not tied to an overall goal as to what direction you want to move in. So yes, we got to have budgets, and I think that's a very prudent thing, but it's also just as prudent to tie that budget to where you want to go in 6 months, in a year, in 5 years from today, and then reassess those goals, because in 6 months, when you initially did the budget, you may not have had a child.
Right.
It could just be totally out of the blue. You could have thought, hey, my wife is on menopause. And we're clear. We're not expecting any babies, and all of a sudden, here comes baby number 5.
Right.
And that goes your budget. There goes your retirement. You have to reevaluate. So we have to be flexible with money, but also stick to make the adjustments that are necessary so that we can get from one point to the next.
You know, I like the idea that you mentioned of not only doing a financial inventory, because a financial inventory is absolutely necessary, but of also listing your goals.
That's right.
That is the one thing that will help you stick to the plan, because you know where you're going, or at least where you're headed, and you can then come up with some kind of timeline as to how and when you can get there. Because I remember when I was getting out of debt, man, without a plan, you begin to feel like all I'm doing is paying, working to pay bills, and that can become very discouraging. But when I started looking at it, like you said, as what I wanted to accomplish, all of a sudden it became very fun.
That's right, and that's why we often say in the financial service community, a failure to plan is a plan to fail. So,
now, in your book you talk about there's more than one risk in town.
That's right.
What do you mean by that?
Right. And I'm glad you really asked that, because we live in a society that is divided between the haves and the have-nots, the accredited versus the non-accredited. And most people that are not millionaires, they're classified as accredited by the Securities and Exchange Commission, non-accredited by the Securities and Exchange Commission. And as a result of that subtle legislation, what's marketed to them are primarily what you call retail investments, stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. So when you talk to somebody that is a retail investor that is not necessarily plugged into non-accredited non-accredited investors, the only language and investment that they're really familiar with are stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, and they're wondering why they are so concerned about the volatility that's in the stock market, the up and down swings of the stock market. And that's because they are so focused on retail investments. Well, I'm here to tell you that not only are there retail investments, there are also investment vehicles, and I call them Mr. ASP in my books, and it talks about an investment vehicle versus a retail investment. One is one would get you from point A to point B, and another is what the Goldman Sachs of the world is selling you that are not necessarily profitable investments.
Okay, we're going to have to...
But they've been marked up to retail prices.
Talk about those other investments, because that would be really cool to do. We've got a caller on the line. Hi, Rick. How are you doing?
Hey, how you doing?
Wonderful.
I really like the show and what you guys are talking about with money. So let's dive right in real quick. Let's say hypothetically I'm a business owner and I got a refund back on my check, on my income tax. What are some things and how I can invest my money to, as you guys would say, to protect it or to make it grow?
Okay. Right.
Okay, he's got a sudden windfall, income tax refund, like most of you guys have at home, and you think that that's a good thing. Eric can explain why sometimes that's not really a good thing.
Right.
So this is another person that let the government use their money for free.
That's right.
For a year.
That's right. Right.
So now that they've done that and they've gotten their refund without interest, what should they do with it? What's the best use of that?
Prior to spending any money, go back to what we mentioned earlier. You need to take in financial inventory. Figure out where you're at. And prior to investing that money and taking a risk to put your money into an investment, it may be a wiser choice to pay off some debt. particularly if you have something outside of mortgage debt, some credit cards, student loans, and things that have just been lingering around that are eating up your cash flow on a periodic basis. You should pay off those debts in an accelerated fashion prior to taking some additional risk. But after you pay it off your debts, or you have a reasonable plan to pay off your debts in an accelerated fashion, some of the things that you should do is start looking at some non-retail investments, such as, for instance, real estate. Real estate is a great investment right now, and one of the challenges that most people have is being able to obtain financing to purchase real estate. But if your refund is large enough and you're handy enough, you can go to Home Depot, Menards, and some of these home improvement places and buy you one of these houses that need construction for $5,000. And use the refund check to do that versus buying an automobile. So that's one of the options that I would recommend. Another thing that people are doing that I don't necessarily agree with, but is providing an 18% cash return on investment, is tax certificate sales. So,
Okay.
Right, so you can get that, and that's a statutory rate. So there are a number of sound businesses out here, or real estate that has high tax rates that aren't paying their taxes on time, and as a result, those taxes are being sold by the respective governments, and you could buy that and eventually own the property if they don't repay it. So that's one way, and I just mentioned two things, and those are both associated with real estate, but also there are a number of things that you can do, but those are just two things that I would recommend, or three things: paying off your debt first, looking at real estate, and then also looking at some type of tax certificate sale. Those are three things that are providing high rates of return on investment right now.
But don't forget to do your financial plan, and then put your plans and of your goals also side by side first.
Exactly. So that was four things.
That's right. We've got Joseph on the phone. Hi, Joseph. How are you doing?
Hi. I heard you guys talk about real estate. Is this an actual good time to really invest in real estate?
Is this an actual good time to invest in real estate?
I'm going to tell you.
I was just wondering, with refund checks and things of that nature,
Sure.
and the way the economy is this a good time for real estate investment?
Yeah, I'm going to say absolutely yes. This is the best time. The Bible talks about the wealth of the wicked is laid up for the just. And I believe this is an ideal time to get rich. Although real estate prices are declining still across the country, and apparently they're still declining in Cook County and throughout Illinois and a number of metropolitan areas. It is still, regardless as to the price that these properties may ultimately sell for, when you start looking at the rental values of a lot of these parcels of land, this is a great time to invest, because people are often one-sided. They've been thinking about, well, I don't want to buy real estate because the prices are continually declining. But one thing that is not declining as rapidly is the rents that people are paying in order to occupy these places. So that's what I would look at and base my decision off of that. So yes, now is a great time to invest in real estate. Now,
In here, there's a question, and this is a question that I thought was really uncanny, because a lot of people are not honest when they ask this question or look for answers, and that is, what keeps you awake at night?
Oh, wow. That is a great question, because I talk to a number of people that are young, middle-aged, and older. And one thing that constantly keeps a number of these people awake, their retail investors, is volatility. They can't sleep at night because they don't know if their money is safe. They don't know if they're going to wake up tomorrow and all of a sudden their brokerage has collapsed, or all of a sudden their portfolio went from being $250,000 down to zero.
Or your house was
right.
worth $250,000. You went to sleep, it was worth $25,000.
And now you're upside down. So that is absolutely right. That is keeping people awake at night. And the solution to that is learning how to value investments, manage risk properly, and then playing a role with your money. Until we start doing those three things, people are constantly going to be apprehensive about investing. So, but volatility is the number one thing that keeps investors awake at night, because they don't know if their money is safe.
Okay, we'll have to come back to how do you value your investments, but we've got a caller on the line. Hi, Helen, how are you?
Hi, how are you all doing today?
Fine.
My question to Mr. January is, what's the best place to save my money? I mean, I'm getting closer towards my retirement time, and I really don't know which direction to go in.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea of
Sure.
how to save or how to invest properly for my future.
Sure. Right. Stephanie, thank you so much. Or Helen, how can I forget that name? That was my grandmother's name.
Hello?
And Helen is a great name. So, but I like the question because people are often told to save their money. And when you save your money, you're thinking about accumulating a certain dollar figure.
Right.
You want to have $100,000, $200,000, or $1 million, or $2 million in order to make yourself comfortable. One of the things that I recommend in the second book that I wrote is not to save for retirement. Now, I know
So
that
what do you
sounds
do?
like...
Right. So what do you do for
Right,
retirement?
Right, because if a person saved $100,000 and you or say $1 million, and what if you live to be 100, and your expenses all of a sudden you outlived your money,
Right.
and that happens all the time. So versus saving for retirement, what I advocate is for a person to think economic and not financial, and think about maximizing your passive income so that you have some passive income coming in the entirety of your life. Whether you live to be 120, you will still have money coming in.
Okay.
So versus saving and having something that you have to spend down, which is what retail investors do, I recommend that a person actually invest. Get a passive income, build that passive income up, get 5,000, 10,000, figure out what your numbers are, and get, once you reach that goal, say for instance, we have a job and we know that our job is bringing in, whether it's $5,000 or $100,000 a month, we base our budget based on that. And we live accordingly. Likewise, when you're in retirement, if you have a certain sum of income coming in on a monthly basis, you can budget off of that, so that if things do occur, which they will occur, you'll know how to make the adjustments. And you'll have something to make adjustments with, and you won't have to worry about running out of money during retirement.
So how do I then secure a passive investment in passive income? So like the caller said, she's
Sure.
got some money, so how does she secure passive income?
Sure, right. And I call that the secret to making money while you
Okay.
sleep. And the number one thing, there are two things that are related to that. One, you have to learn how to value investments. Most people haven't been taught how to value investments. People have been taught to buy stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, but not how do you value investments. People have been taught to buy houses for themselves, but they haven't been taught how to value the investments properly. So as a result, we have people that are upside down in their mortgages, and other people, as you mentioned earlier, that are apprehensive about the safety of their money. That's the thing that's keeping them awake at night. So in order to resolve that, one, you got to learn how to value an investment, and that way you'll start getting some passive income coming in.
So give me an example of valuing my investment.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. An example of that. If for a person, say for instance, that is a multi-billionaire,
Okay.
and they've got hundreds of thousands of dollars. Let's make it real practical. The Waltons. They have, I believe, the last time I calculated, over $100 million that comes in from the Walmart stock dividend alone. So they get this collectively as a family, and that for that reason they own over 50% of the Walmart stock, because they don't have to sell the investment because they're getting so much money coming in from the investments.
Okay.
Well, to the Waltons, based on the dividend that they're getting from Walmart Corporation, the stock may be worth $50 a share. But for someone that doesn't have $1 billion to invest, but maybe $250,000, that same share of stock may be only worth $2.
Okay.
So you adjust how you pay, adjust what you pay for the cash flow. That's essentially how you value investments. There's an exact formula for that,
Okay.
and there's more that goes into it because you have to analyze the business, and there are a number of things that you have to do in order to determine the actual value. But in a nutshell, you have to base your decision off of the cash flow and a couple other factors. I don't want to give all the goodies away.
Okay, now, let's say I got $200, $300, right? But I have that every month. Because I get this a question a lot when I'm out on the speaking tour. They have $200 a month. What's the best place for that?
The best place for it.
Yeah, minimal debt.
Sure.
Yeah.
Minimal debt. Again, we have to go back to answering your question about what are your goals? What do
Okay.
you want to be?
Okay.
in 6 months? What do you want to be in 10 years? In order to answer that question, we
Okay.
have to figure out where you want to be. And then once we know where you want to be in a certain amount of time, it's like in order for me to make it to the studio today, I lived, say if I lived 100 miles away from the studio and I only had a half an hour to get here, how fast would I have to drive?
Right. Okay.
I'd probably have to catch a plane. I have to drive
right.
so fast in order to make it 100 miles in less than 30 minutes.
Okay.
A car
So you
can't
really
drive.
have
Right.
to know where you want to be.
So you really have to, I mean, it is so important that you know where you need to be, because you can end up going grocery shopping. It's like going grocery shopping and going grocery shopping and not having a plan about what meal you're going to make. So you can end up going grocery shopping and buying a lot of things that you already have, and buying a lot of the things, missing a number of things that you need in order to make a meal. So that plan is so important. That cannot be underscored. You really have to have your plan and goals in mind before you spend a dime.
Okay. We've got another caller. Hi, Lester. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. Enjoying the show, and really enjoying the show. Very informative. But I need some practical advice. All right. Debts are high. Income is low. Where do I start at? How do I get out of this miry putt?
Right. Yeah. And I believe you probably answered the question yourself, because if your debts are high and your income are low, one of the things that I'd advocate, maybe consider filing a Chapter 7. Talk to an attorney, see if you can declare a jubilee on yourself and get rid of some of those debts. Or contact your creditor. There's nothing wrong with settling your debts for less than what you owe. So if you're behind in your payment and you're struggling to make your payments, I understand that if you incurred a debt, that there's often this stigma about not paying your debts on time, which it should be. I mean, if you sign on a dotted line for something, you should be a man or woman of your word. But if circumstances have changed and things are out of, beyond your control, renegotiate. Donald Trump did it.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right. The volatility got him. He renegotiated.
Right. That's right. The Trump Tower is the largest skyscraper built in the United States since the Sears Tower or something like that.
Right.
He had to renegotiate that debt. So don't be ashamed of renegotiating your debt. But then even before you renegotiate your debt, you have to do something. You got to come up with a game plan to increase your income. So maybe you're in some type of occupation that's dying, maybe some occupation that's been outsourced. You need to maybe reinvent yourself and figure out how, God, you've given me these talents, and there's some things that I've always wanted to do that maybe I've been putting off. Well, now is the time to do it. Whether you have to start part-time or go into it full-time, you have to do something. Because at the end of the day, even if you renegotiated your debts for 10% of the amount owed, if you don't have the income to pay for it, it would be unwise for you to do that, because you do need to eat. So that's what I would recommend. Focus on your active income, and then also once you've got settled there, start thinking about some passive income, so that one day you will not have to work because you have some money flowing in to satisfy your needs. Hopefully that helped you.
Thank you. In your book, you talk about one risk covers all possible risk.
Yeah. Now this is my favorite. Well, I'm saying it on the air. I was a mama's boy. And my books are based on the laws of momentum. And one of the risks that I talk about in the book is, I call it the mother of all risk, and it's momentum risk. Momentum risk, once you really get into the depths of what it explains every type of risk that you can imagine. It explains volatility, which is a form of risk. It explains price risk. It explains inflation risk, political risk. All of it, the interest rate risk, all of those risks are covered by that one risk. If you understand the mother of all risk, which is momentum risk, as I discussed in my book, you'll be able to make any prudent decision on how to manage your money. And I mention that because oftentimes before people get into investing, particularly retail investors, they get inundated or concerned about all of the complexity of the terminology. They can't recite all of the risk like a PhD can from Harvard University. So what I say is, versus trying to memorize all of these risks, which is very difficult and only a few people can do it, focus on learning this one risk. And once you understand how to manage this one risk, which is the momentum risk, the mother of all risk, which is an undesired change in your position, you can get ahead. You can make some